New Zealand was to line up with the fastest catamaran in the world. Race or mismatch, it would be the most extraordinary confrontation ever for yachting's greatest prize, the America's Cup. The first shots in this campaign were fired here at the San Diego Yacht Club a year before the New York court ruled for a race. Leading the attack was Michael Fay. Against him and holding the high ground were the burghers of this establishment. Their differences were fundamental. Fay wanted a race for the Cup. The Yacht Club didn't, at least not until a time and place of its own choosing, and that was far off in 1991. On July the 17th, 1987, Michael Fay came here to lunch with the officers of the club. They didn't know it then, but Fay had a different menu, and they were on it.
During lunch, I said to Fred Fry, the then Commodore, well, we are coming for the next Cup, Fred, that's definite. But we don't want to wait 4 years. In fact, I said, we want to race next year. And he said, well, you can't. And I said also, well, I think I should tell you also that we're not really that keen on 12 meters for San Diego. We'd like to race a bigger boat. I said, in fact, I've got here for you a notice of challenge, a formal notice of challenge, Commodore, from the Mercury Bay Boating Club for a match next year in 90-foot boats.
My comment is unprintable, but the next comment I said is, that's very interesting, Michael. We'll have to see about that. And so we went into the club office and we sat down and he presented me the official letter and the dimensions of the yacht. And you could tell right away that this was going to be a very, very big boat and a very different situation.
Michael Fay and his partner David Rishwhite first caught the America's Cup bug in 1985 when they were asked to lend their forces to an ailing Kiwi challenge in Perth. The Kiwi challenge was an outstanding boat-time effort. Building in fiberglass rather than aluminium, their third boat, KZ7 or Kiwi Magic, became the boat to beat. Her performance in the heats was so effective that her legality was challenged by the Americans, who feared her superiority.
There's been 78 12 meters built all in aluminum, and so if you want to build a glass boat, why would you do it unless you wanted to cheat?
Whoa. I don't think he should have said that, but I'll take it all back. I don't think
That's what I have to say.
Connor's sideswipe was aimed to rattle the New Zealand campaign. This was fighting with the gloves off. In the heats, KZ7 won all but one of her 38 races. The only loss was to Connor. Then in the close fought Best of 7 Challengers final, Connor with Stars and Stripes finally overcame Kiwi Magic by 4 races to 1. He then went on to defeat the Australians easily, regaining the cup he had lost in 1983 after 132 years of unbroken supremacy by the Americans. Fay and the New Zealand crew, bloodied but unbowed, returned home to a hero's welcome. Everyone knew that their first cup challenge had been very close to being victorious.
We went for the cup. We hit the brick wall. We sat back and watched Connor take it. And I think deep down we knew maybe if we could do it again, maybe if we could have changed, it should have been there. It was there and we slipped. So in that sense, I don't think any of us wanted to wait 4 years. And I don't think any of us wanted to accept the status quo in any way, shape or form. Every part of us was saying, well, why didn't we do it? Why were they better? Where do you go from here? How do you get that cup?
By mid-July, a design concept team consisting of internationally renowned naval architect Bruce Farr, his partner Russell Bowler, and sail designer Tom Schnackenberg were well down the line with their radical design. Freed from the old class restrictions, the project was a designer's dream, but not for San Diego, who, hoping it was nothing more than a nightmare, decided to ignore the whole thing, imagining it would go away.
So I made 4 or 5 trips to San Diego looking for a meeting to discuss our challenge. But it became pretty obvious by August that we weren't going to get a meeting. Towards the end of August, we weren't even going to get a response. We weren't going to get a yes. We weren't going to get a no. We weren't going to get anything. So really then we had to face up to the choice. We were either going to go away and be bluffed out of the game, or we were going to have to pursue the challenge.
And pursue it he did. With no alternative left, Fay looked for a ruling on the legality of his challenge from the New York State Supreme Court, which holds jurisdiction over the deed. On the 25th of November, Judge Carmen Kaparik handed down her decision on the legality of the New Zealand challenge.
And I would like briefly to quote from her decision, where she says, in the face of a properly tendered challenge, the San Diego Yacht Club
Must defend on the terms of that challenge or forfeit the cup. We have no intention of forfeiting this cup.
In January, Fay and his team returned to San Diego to sort out race details. High on their list of priorities was the confirmation that San Diego would meet their challenge in a similar boat.
With these guys, as a method of trying to knock the Kiwis off, want to turn around and say, well, all right, we are going to build that sort of boat and we are going to go race up there, then they have a risk for us.
Technical consultants.
The day after they left, San Diego Yacht Club and Sail America announced their response to Fay's radical challenge.
Building two boats. They're both multi-hulls. One of them is a catamaran.
It was an all-or-nothing response to the most incredible monohull the world had seen in more than 50 years. For the America's Cup community, here was a chance to take a look into the future of the Cup and what it could look like.
No, the big one.
While the campaign had finally hit the water, the war on the land stepped up a notch. Within the deed of gift is the statement that you sail a match for the America's Cup. Neither Michael Fay nor any of his team felt that San Diego's proposed catamaran constituted a proper response to their legal challenge. Quite simply, it smacked of finding any way out of meeting the K-boat with a like or similar craft. There'd be no similarity between Stars and Stripes and New Zealand. The likelihood of a mismatch was to drive the Kiwis back to the courtroom.
George Tompkins will bring you up to date with the New Zealand Challenger's present position on the Monohull multi-hull issue.
Following up on the first question that was put to Michael last Saturday at the press conference at the dockyard, I think was, are you going back to court and when? And the answer to that is yes. And the when was this morning, New York time, 9 a.m.
I think it's sheer size. I don't have any idea of the speed we're doing. It's a bit like a top quality motor car. Until the chase boats came alongside, you don't really have the idea of going fast through the water.
With no comparable boat to trial against, KZ-1 literally had to race against herself. For this, the most advanced sailing computer system ever installed on a yacht was designed. One system constantly monitored the loads in the high-tech mast, rigging and hull.
Higher. Oh, 11.5. Just search then. Yeah.
A second system, using cameras at the top of the mast, measured the shapes of the sails in real time, telling the sail trimmers how efficiently the sails were set. A third recorded navigation and performance data.
The thing that this kind of yacht does is that it shows that there are no real horizons. I think in all-round terms, it is unquestionably the fastest monohull sailing today.
The day before the New York court hearing, Sail America unveiled the first of their defending catamarans, Stars and Stripes. Her superlight 60-foot hulls were built of carbon fibre, and she was topped off with a new dimension wing sail rig, the largest ever on a catamaran. The fundamental differences between the Challenger and the Defender were plain to see, and the attention of the media was split between the boat and the politics of the race.
Mr. Fay thinks that he can impose his dimensions on the Defender, and the Defender, San Diego, is saying, sorry, the deed of gift rules. And we think the judge is going to say the same thing.
But I mean, originally San Diego did not go with the deed of gift rules because they didn't reply to New Zealand when they laid the challenges.
Well, San Diego did reply to the deed of gift, but you're right.
You couldn't have built a monohull in that time? This complex?
I don't know. We just didn't give that particularly a great deal of thought.
Well, it's pretty hard not to be excited about this.
So Michael Fay could have possibly done such an exciting and good for America's Cup racing.
I'd like to think that eventually that'll turn out for the best and that the couple benefit from it now that we're in it. What choice do we have?
I think this is largely going to be a design competition. And as I've said all along, I think one or the other of the boats probably will be quite a bit ahead of the other, but you never know.
On her first sail, the hard-wing Cat was timed at 18 knots in a mere 8 knots of wind. It was a convincing demonstration of the intrinsic speed differential that the catamaran would have if San Diego were allowed to race it against the K-boat. 3,000 miles away in New York, the Challenger's lawyer, George Tompkins, was putting that point to Judge Catamaran.
And the affidavits which you have before you tells you all the technical details of why that's so and why it makes the catamaran, no matter what size, smaller. A far superior boat is the speed. There is no contest, no match. At any wind, at any speed, in any waters. The Sail America concept of a match, for example, Your Honor, would be these, and I offer a few examples. Muhammad Ali, a heavyweight boxer, fighting Sugar Ray Leonard, a middleweight. The one-on-one match would hardly fare an equal. Mark Spitz, multiple gold medal swimming champion versus Dennis Conner, a non-swimmer of America's Cup fame. 1-on-1, but hardly a fair and equal match.
The best bet on the long-awaited court decision was for a ruling going the Kiwis' way and a postponement of the racing until May of '89. The Catamarans had shown their paces on the open sea off Point Loma, and no one relished the prospect of racing against a boat that was obviously so much faster. The judge, however, had a different idea.
Should not decided that the catamaran is legal or illegal, as I understand it. So you've got to go back, and we might have to go back to court on the multi-hull issue.
The first analysis showed Judge Kiparik's decision was a total wild card. What it amounted to was race and decide on the legality of the cat later. The long struggle to get the San Diego Yacht Club into a monohull was over. In one stroke, the judge put the mismatch issue at the top of the agenda and guaranteed a return to court.
I like that.
Michael Fay's reaction to this new challenge was unequivocal. He was still determined to fight for the principle.
My position's got to be simple. I came and I challenged in the tradition of the Cup with an exciting boat for the Cup. I have never seen the defender since that day behave like a defender and behave like a sportsman. We will protest the mismatch forever. It is not sporting. It is not defending the Cup in terms of the deed of gift. And it is not right that the America's Cup become a mismatch. We will sail and protest.
The task before the New Zealand crew was daunting. Dennis Conner now had both cats out on the water, trialling against each other, demonstrating their incredible straight-line speed. The Kiwis' response to the catamaran defence was to confront it head-on. Testing had showed that the big boat was capable of carrying even more sail, and a new mainsail, the largest ever racing mainsail, was built. On the water, the emphasis now switched to full race training. The final cockpit crew was picked. David Barnes, 3-time World 470 champion, was named skipper.
Just be given the responsibility of learning how to sail this boat the best we can. And really, as far as we're all concerned, we've got to go out there and put on a good showing so that if the worst came to the worst, then really people can look at us and say, well, if they were racing against another boat of similar size and similar design, they would have beaten them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the real disappointments is that we've put all the effort into building and tuning this boat, and it won't ever get a real yacht race.
The public of San Diego, having had a good chance to look at the big boat, joined in the catamaran versus monohull debate.
I think there's two different types of boats here completely, and it's like racing a stock car versus an Indy 500 car, and when you have that situation, it doesn't make for a race that's always equal.
I think that was a cheap shot, really, going in with the catamaran.
Although this cup looked like being a short, sharp affair, San Diego decked itself out for the coming battle. For America's Cup, read merchandising. Sail America simply hoped it was a dress rehearsal for the real thing in 1991, once this sneak attack, as Dennis Conner had described it, had been seen off. On a social level, one could be forgiven for thinking nothing out of the ordinary was happening. Certainly not the most bitter and fundamental fight in the history of the Cup. This series and the issues surrounding it were literally about the future and survival of the Cup. And America's Cup war of words was underway with a vengeance.
Well, I'm fed up with defending myself and the Stars and Stripes crew and team for having a fast boat. Maybe I'm confused. I spent my whole sailing career trying to come up with a fast boat. I thought that was the whole idea in sailboat racing.
We don't need an America's Cup to prove that a catamaran is faster than a monohull. Everybody knows that. And I think everybody in America knows that Dennis doesn't represent them when he goes out there and says, well, look, it doesn't have to be fair. There's nothing about fairness in the deed of gift.
Their plan now seems to be to set the world up for a lawsuit by complaining and whimpering about us being unfair or sailing too fast a boat. Well, you can see what I think about that.
The first race for the 27th America's Cup would be over a course laid down by the deed of gift, 20 miles to windward and 20 miles downwind return. Even before the starting gun, Stars and Stripes showed her potential, accelerating past KZ1. It was an indication of what was to come. KZ1 crossed the line 10 seconds ahead of Stars and Stripes, but then Dennis Conner wasted no time, accelerating past the big boat, placing himself between KZ1 and the windward mark. Within 20 minutes, Stars and Stripes was in a commanding position, and Dennis Conner had a problem: how to stay close enough to KZ1 and make it look like a match. For weeks, everyone had seen how fast the cat could go. Now they were going to be shown how slow it could be reasonably made to sail.
Is Dennis going as fast as he can? Jim, I alternate. Sometimes I think Dennis Conner is sailing very fast. Right now, he's sailing very slow. Right now, the boat is straight into the wind. The jib is luffing. The mainsail's in the middle of the boat, and he's almost stopped dead. You know, if anybody's trying to wonder whether he's sandbagging or not, take it from me. He's slowing the boat down. He's going slower than he possibly could. Unfortunately, this one.
At the windward mark, Stars and Stripes was 9 minutes ahead of the big boat. The race was as good as over. 20 miles on, Stars and Stripes crossed the line 18 minutes ahead of KZ1. Most experts reckoned a truer margin for that course and wind speed should have been closer to 1 hour.
17:50 and counting.
KZ1 sailed the course in a record-breaking time for a Monohull.
She's over the line now. 17:55 was the time.
Race 1 had proved what everyone with the exception of the San Diego Yacht Club had been predicting, and the first round of the mismatch was over.
We didn't feel that Stars and Stripes was out anywhere near her potential. We felt that they just paced us around the course most of the way. And it was disappointing for us to see a boat which is potentially a lot faster than ours, which was not really sailed very well. And I think if that is the best that Dennis can do, then I think it's a disappointment to him to be defending in the America's Cup, because I feel the boat could have gone a lot better than what it did.
Can you answer that, Dennis?
No, I guess when he's won 4 America's Cup, he can then tell me how to do it.
Okay, questions now.
One cheap shot was not enough for Dennis Conner. In full flight, he continued.
I'm sailing a cat. Somebody else is sailing a dog.
The second of the 3 scheduled races was also to be over a deed of gift course. It was a 39-mile triangle with the first leg to windward. The Catamaran had a very superior speed advantage on both reaching legs. Surprisingly, Stars and Stripes and KZ1 engaged in a tacking duel, but the big boat gained on the Cat all the time. By throwing a dummy tack, David Barnes had Dennis Conner stop dead in the water, an embarrassing situation for an experienced sailor. After that, Conner lost interest in pretending to race a match, and taking advantage of the increasing wind, powered up the Cat and used its massive speed advantage to take a commanding lead. For 5 months, the big boat had been racing against herself and her own target speeds, and here she was doing the same. The real contest was the desire of her crew to achieve what they had proved they were capable of doing, sailing the largest, fastest monohull built in 50 years with skill and determination. Rounding the final mark, they were 12 minutes down on the Cat. Stars and Stripes crossed the line 22 minutes ahead of New Zealand. Dennis Conner had retained the cup. The challenge had been repulsed, at least on the water. When the big boat crossed the line, the crew's efforts were acknowledged by the waiting spectator fleet.
Conner just couldn't keep out of trouble. Even after he won the race by 21 minutes 10 seconds, he was in hot water on the high seas. Surrounded by a fleet of spectator craft speeding to keep up with his high-flying Cat, he sped past the yacht club packed with, originally, well-wishers. The wash from the speeding armada ripped the club apart. Spectators were injured, the marina damaged as boats pounded into it. The fans turned to hecklers.
I guess the next question is, who's responsible?
Oh, I'd say Sail America without a doubt. If Dennis hadn't been going to such an extreme speed, they wouldn't have fought him. They wouldn't have got in front of him. But he was leading the pack. There's no question about it.
And then we said, how about enforcing the speed limit? And the guy laughed at us. He laughed at us. And I mean, if Dennis had come in just a tad slower.
Other dock scenes were more pleasant as Conner and crew went swimming. So did the Kiwis. But the fun was short-lived. If you thought this event was in any way sporting, listen to the post-match press conference.
I will not be going home to New Zealand until after that protest has been heard in the New York court. And I'd like to be home for Christmas.
Since we're all politicking here, Michael, I have a letter.
I haven't started politicking yet, Dennis.
It doesn't say anything about Monohull or Catamaran, Michael.
Dennis,
but I'm no attorney.
Did you pick up the first letter on July the 23rd, or did you pick one up back on July the 17th at the same time?
I'm just a carpet salesman, Michael. I mean, it's hard to believe, but I really like him. I mean,
What do you do to the people you don't like?
It was a mismatch. I think it was significantly because the Challenger yacht was not fast.
I find it quite disturbing that the gentlemen on my right, who are supposedly, some of them, professionals in the industry that I work, can sit in a press conference and tell lies. That really troubles me.
Why don't you show up in San Francisco? I'm sure they'll let you enter the Maxi Bulk Series.
I'll keep
Stay on the starting line in San Francisco, big boy.
Dennis, I'll keep the boat. Dennis, I'll keep the boat on this coast long enough for you to try build one and sail me.
It was a disgraceful exhibition, but worse was still to come. The group broke up to allow the winners on stage, but Farr had one last claim that his American counterparts were lying.
I heard that.
Big boy.
Things. It does.
You're full of
Yeah, I think
get lost. You're a loser. Get off the stage. The winner. You get
to say that kind of stuff.
Michael Fay and his crew went to San Diego with a challenge for a race with a new boat and what he saw as a new and exciting future for the Cup. They expected nothing more than integrity, sportsmanship and a fair match. Few think they received that, but from their side there were no regrets about a job well done. Later that evening, Alan Bond, who has more America's Cup campaigns under his belt than any other challenger, summed up what many felt about the events surrounding the 27th defence of the Cup.
Well, it really wasn't America's Cup today. It was a great disappointment to the rest of the world watching the great mismatch and the lack of sportsmanship that was out there.
You were the judge. How would you rule in Michael Fay's lawsuit?
Well, I would have to rule that there was not a proper America's Cup match, and I'd have to return the cup to New Zealand.
The fact that Michael Fay had the courage to build this magnificent big boat has changed the face of the America's Cup forever. Already a new class of lightweight boats, bigger than the 12 metres which held sway for 30 years, has been planned. They are the direct descendants of New Zealand, the boat which fired imaginations and will keep the Cup alive for many years, the result of the efforts of Fay and his crew, who, like so many before them, have discovered the powerful addiction of yachting's holy grail.
It wasn't a question for me of why I challenged. I think I just picked up something that was there and started to bounce the ball along. It's more for me now, and I think also for David Rishwaite, that we're not going to stop bouncing the ball until we put it in the net. And if we have to cross over that court time and time again and go up and down it as many times as we have to, that ball, as far as we're concerned, is going in that net.
Okay, go.